I think our next presenter is Tim Harrawood from the FP2 Center for an update.
First, I want to see a show of hands. How many people are familiar with FP2, formerly the Foundation for Pavement Preservation? Okay, so about half the room. Well, we're going to update you today on what's been going on here lately, and those of you that aren't familiar with it, we're going to introduce you to FP2 and kind of let you know what we do. First, we'll go through the agenda. We're going to do an FP2 overview. We're going to talk about the pavement preservation research study with NCAT and Minroads. We're going to talk about the outreach through the Pavement Preservation Journal, FP2's advocacy efforts, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which everybody is aware of, the IIJA. We're going to talk about FP2's legislative efforts, the strategic planning meeting we had earlier in May, and then we'll give you some closing comments. So who makes up FP2? We've got equipment manufacturers, chemical suppliers, associations like ERA, EMA, and ISA, material suppliers, and contractors. Okay, that's who makes us up. That's what they provide, the funding that allows us to do the things that we do. One of the most important things we've done over the last several years, which actually started in 2010 with discussions, but came to fruition in 2012, is a preservation group study at the National Center for Asphalt Technology at Auburn University in Alabama. The study objectives were to develop a life cycle curve as compared to pretreatment condition of the pavement. And we want to measure the pavement life extension of the treated pavement and chart that out. And the whole idea was not to compare treatment to treatment, but compare treatment to the untreated control sections. One thing that wasn't part of the original study plans was a condition improving benefits that we realized that we were seeing, whether it be in friction or a slight improvement in IRIs or reduced rutting. But we definitely realized there were some condition improving benefits, and we quickly made that part of the plan as well, and it was adopted into the study. The study locations were Lee Road 159, which was placed in 2012, low volume traffic road, but high amount of truck traffic. The rock quarry and an asphalt plant at the end of that road, which is a dead end. So empty trucks in, full trucks out, and just a high percentage of truck traffic and very few cars. We also did some on the NCAT accelerated test track in 2014 and 2015. And from that, Dr. Vargas, which is gracing us with her presence back there, wrote an article in their end of the cycle report on proactive preservation. If you have not seen that report, you really need to read that, and it tells you all the advantages of starting your preservation treatments earlier. So, and then in 2015, we went on a higher volume road, which was US 280, with a little over 5,000 ADT. Now, the difference between Lee Road was 100-foot test sections, which you can well imagine that they were difficult to place with equipment that's built for speed, and you're only doing 100 feet long. But when we moved to 280, we moved that out to 1/10 of a mile, so had a little bit more room to work there. Now, then we got the warm climate study locations in place, and we decided we needed to do some cold climate stuff, and that's where Minroad comes in, and they chose US 169, and we put treatments on it, the same treatments we put on down in Alabama in 2016, and that road had a 4,500 ADT, and then we did CASA 8, which was a low volume traffic road, which had about 750 ADT. So here's kind of a little timeline. You can see we started in 2012, and you can see all the little bubbles there are the times that we went and placed these treatments at the different locations. And again, it shows it started in 2012, but I can assure you the plan started much earlier than that. And they're going to quit collecting data on this at the end of next year, 2023, and the final report will be out for everybody's viewing in 2024. So, some interesting things about this preservation group study. When it first started, there are only 7 departments of transportation and industry that were involved in the study. That's who was carrying the burden of all the funding, and they also got to add their likes and dislikes as far as the study went, what treatments they wanted to see, what specifications they wanted used, materials and things of that nature. The original study duration was only supposed to be for 3 years. We're in our 11th year now. And we're getting a ton of great information from this. So it's actually not in its 10th year now, it's in its 11th year because we first started putting treatments down in early August of 2012. The interesting thing is the data is so compelling that's coming from this study that now we have 22 state departments of transportation, FHWA, and industry continues to help fund this research as well. So as you can see, from 7 to 22, some things had to be going right, and this information is pertinent to these agencies that want to put this stuff in their pavement management system. So it's good data, and there's a lot more to come. The evaluation measures were cracking, rutting, IRI, ground penetrating radar, FWDs, moisture probes, macro textures, friction, binder oxidation of the underlying pavement, and permeability. Okay, the ones that mainly get talked about, and that's simply because they're the MAP 21 evaluation measures, is cracking, IRI, and rutting. There is a lot of other information there that's available, but that's typically what gets the airtime. Now, one thing that I have to applaud Auburn and Dr. Vargas is this interactive software that she has put together that you can go see. It is more information than you'll ever digest on these treatments and their performance, but you can go to ncat.us, click on pavement preservation, and then click on observed performance, and it's amazing the data that you can get on these treatments and how they were placed, when they were placed, and how they're performing. So FP2 is going to continue to fund this research through 2024. It's entering its 11th year since treatment, doing fantastic. All preservation treatments are outperforming the control sections. And in fact, in Minnesota, 2 of the control sections had to be replaced because they were falling apart. So it's a pretty good example of what you can do with some pavement preservation. And what's important is the data shows that performance far exceeds the survey data that has been used in models for decades. How many people have filled out these surveys before when they come to them? Okay. So first of all, not everybody participates in that, so you get limited information back. Second of all, did the right person fill that out, and do they know about their program? So it's just not as reliable of information as this data information that's out there right now. So the whole idea is to implement this moving forward, and NCAT and MinRoads are trying to do that by holding findings and implementation web meetings. They've already done one on crack sealing, which was held July 26th, and everybody's invited to these, just not sponsors. They'd like to hear from everybody on this stuff, so in the final report, their thoughts and everything can be represented. They got another one on October the 4th on fog seals, and then on December the 6th on chip seals. So make sure you mark your calendars on that, get signed up for that, for those web meetings. They're fantastic. It's just kind of an open forum. Dr. Vargas and some of the MinRoads people give the information on the treatments, when they were placed, what they were placed with, how they're performing, and then we talk about how we're going to implement them moving forward. All right, communications. Has anybody here get the Pavement Preservation Journal? A lot of you, not nearly enough of you. This is a free publication. You can stop by the FP2 booth over in the other room, put your name and email down. We'll get you on the email copy list for this magazine, and it comes to you quarterly. Now, I think John has left the room. I've got a perfect opportunity for the New Mexico Department of Transportation, because next year our editorial plan states this: we're going to concentrate on environmental sustainability, resiliency of preservation to drive the editorial content in 2023. Their chip seal program, especially with its use with wrap materials, fits this bill perfectly. And those are the kind of articles that we're looking for to help different states with their sustainability concerns as they move forward. The journal itself, right now, print copies, we've got about 5,000 people that get that, the subscribers that get that magazine. After the Midwest Partnership meeting a couple of weeks ago, I can tell you that increased by about 30 different people there. Online, we get about 3,100 subscribers, so this journal is reaching over 8,000 people as it stands right now. We have more editorial content than we've ever had before. It continues to grow when most trade magazines are not. So it's a great magazine, and we have several copies over at the booth, so stop by and pick up a free copy. Now we're going to move into one of the other major things that FP2 does. It's by far probably one of the most important. It's our advocacy efforts. We continue, and as we always have, it's one of our core principles to advocate for pavement preservation. We've got a legislative language task force that develops our legislative proposals. So when we go to the Hill, we've got some information in hand to help these lawmakers familiarize themselves with pavement preservation and the advantages of it. And of course, our ultimate goal is to increase awareness, knowledge, and deployment of pavement preservation around the country. Another thing that we spend a lot of time on is illustrating that preservation is a solution. It's not the answer to everything, obviously. It's not a magic bullet, but it is a solution to global warming, cost savings. Everybody's generally pretty cash strapped. It does have condition improving benefits that are directly related to safety issues. The life extending benefits are unmistakable, and the condition improvement benefits as well. You know, slight increases in IRI performance, lower rutting, and great friction values. So this is kind of an example of what the Legislative Language Task Force puts together in one-pagers as they go to DC. And somebody told me years ago that no presentation is complete without a graph, so I put this graph in there. But if you see on the left, you can see over a 45-year period of time what the preservation strategy does as compared to the rehabilitative strategy. When it comes to greenhouse gases, if you look down low, the rehabilitative side of the deal is a little over 800,000 greenhouse gas pounds per mile versus the preservation method, which is a little less than 200,000 per mile. So it's an amazing difference. So that's a 76% less greenhouse gas emissions through the preservation study than through the rehabilitative study. Pretty important. In addition to that, there's some cost savings of about 40%. This is the kind of stuff that FP2 puts together to go talk to our lawmakers up on the Hill, and as we move forward, not only just through the federal deal, but local agencies as well. So we prioritize our policy goals and needs articulated in FHWA's Pavement Preservation Strategic Plan. We support research on pavement preservation, and especially when it comes to greenhouse gas benefits. And obviously, just like all of us, would like to see the Highway Trust Fund fully funded. So what have we been doing last year and this year as far as our efforts on the Hill goes? Well, when COVID was still strong and we couldn't have any meetings, which you guys are very familiar with, we were still doing Zoom meetings, GoToMeetings, Microsoft Teams meetings. We were still spreading the good word about preservation. We had webinars with PPRA, the National Center for Pavement Preservation. We had online forums sponsored by industry and the Highway Users Alliance and FHWA, just to name a few. And we continue to advocate for the industry in Congress and with the administration during development, passage, and implementation of the Infrastructure Investment and Job Act, the IIJA. We communicated with congressional leaders and members advocating for pavement preservation and the passage of a long-term highway reauthorization bill. And here's what's important. We participated in over 100 meetings with congressmen, senators, and our staff in a targeted outreach effort. That's what it takes. We have to keep our message of pavement preservation in front of these people, and we keep chipping away, and it's working. So we continue to work closely with our friends, and we also financially support the National Center for Pavement Preservation regarding their management of the AASHTO TSP2 program. NCPP held a National Pavement Preservation Virtual Conference in May of 17th to 21st of last year, and the new director of NCPP, Dr. Bazid Shaban, back there, everybody know Dr. Bazid back there, was named to replace Judith Corley-Lay mid-year. FP2 continues to supply funding for the study along with 22 state DOTs. We're going to continue to do that. We've got great sponsors that continue to step up to see the value of that research and step forward with their money. Again, we're going into our 11th year. We've got 10 years behind us. Nothing has really reverted back to pre-treatment conditions. So all these things are doing really well. They continue to be serviceable, and like I said, none of them are back to the pre-treatment condition. I think the Minnesota roads are, or at least one of them, is scheduled for rehabilitative treatment in 2025 because the underlying pavement is in such a bad state of condition that they had to program something in there. So we're going to lose some test sections up there that are still going to be performing very well, but they're trying to be a little proactive with their rehabilitative method up there. But other than that, the treatments are doing really good. And the PG study is now considered the phase 3 study. And again, they're going to monitor these sections to the end of 2023 and have a final report issued in 2024. And Dr. Vargas, help me here. How many test cells are there in all 4 locations?
We have 145 test sections.
145 different test sections that all of them are a different treatment or combination of treatments and or simply just a control section. So that's how extensive this study is. Okay, let's talk just briefly about the IIJA. It was signed into law November 15th of 2021. Over $350 billion over the next 5 years, 34% increase over baseline spending, 40+ billion over the next 5 years, much distributed through discretionary programs. And FP2 is in a position to help a lot of local agencies out with that as well. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But additional research monies and modification research programs is going to be available. And like our representative in DC calls it, it's a reauthorization on steroids. So, implementation of the IIJA, the FP2 and our helpers in DC are going to work with the DOT and the White House to find ways to move DOT's preservation strategy forward. We're going to inform the pavement preservation industry about the grant programs through the IIJA. In fact, we've got a committee that I'll tell you about a little bit more that's going to do nothing but that. We're going to submit pavement preservation suggestions through FHWA's request for information process. We're going to work with outside coalitions to ensure comments that support pavement preservation strategies. There's a lot of them. You heard a little earlier about the carbon reduction program. FHWA issued guidance clarifying that sustainable pavements and construction materials will be eligible. So you're going to be seeing more of that. The future legislative explicit language to include pavement technologies, including design, materials, and practices that reduce carbon emissions as part of the carbon reduction program. All of these thin non-structural surface treatments that fall under the umbrella of pavement preservation perform very well in this environment. So one of the main things we're doing currently right now is we're working on the Buy American exemption. And other industries have gotten exclusion or waivers on some of the materials that they use that come from out of the country. The pavement preservation industry really can fall under some of those waivers as well, but we are putting forth our best efforts to make sure that pavement preservation and the treatments and the materials that they use can have those same waivers to protect us moving forward. So we want to identify and address any areas where there might be problems accessing funding for pavement preservations under the new law. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, there's already been 180 waivers for this Buy American provision. And it's important. And we are working feverishly on it right now, trying to make sure that the pavement preservation folks, the treatments and the list of materials that they use in their treatments are going to be exclusively covered and obtain that waiver. Okay, FP2 has submitted comments in response to the Office of Management and Budget and DOT requests for information and is engaging with the agencies making the case for pavement preservation and its compliance with this exemption. Like I said, right now it's a big deal on the Hill is the Buy American provision. FHWA is seeking comments on its notice of proposed rulemaking, expanding the scope of national performance management measures to include greenhouse gas emissions. All of these pavement preservation treatments do a wonderful job in that environment again. The Inflation Reduction Act passed last month authorized $250 million for assistance in developing the environmental product declarations for construction materials. The three industries, ERA, EMA, and ISSA, and NAPA, actually four, are working feverishly on getting these things done as well. And we're going to continue to expand the understanding of benefits, use, and support for pavement preservation. Now, let's talk about the strategic planning meeting that was held May 18th in Chicago. Many of you know Jim Multhrop, who was our long-term executive director at FP2, retired last year, and we had to find a new executive director, which we have, and we all miss Jim, but we've got to move forward and continue, on the legacy that Jim built. So we had a strategic planning meeting that was facilitated by our new executive director, Rick Church, and Rick is also the executive director of ERA, EMA, and ISSA. So that works really well. And more than anything, this meeting reinforced the long-held core principles of FP2. Advocacy, research, and outreach, getting the good word out. And from that meeting, we developed 4 committees. The Legislative Advocacy Committee is chaired by Scott Bergkamp. And he's put together a team that puts together the slides and the information that we take to the Hill when we go there. We've got a marketing committee. Bobby Betzold with All States Material Group is chairing that committee. He's helping us with our one-pagers that can go to local agencies. People on the Hill help us with our booth and our website. Dave Wellborn with Ingevity is the chairman of our research committee. So we've actually got a very official committee that works closely together with NCAT and Minroads and all of the sponsors in helping them with the implementation as we move forward. And then what I mentioned earlier is the grant filing committee. A lot of local agencies do not know how to fill these grant applications out. So we're going to try to make that a little bit easier for them and have those grant forms on our website with instructions on how to best fill these things out where they're eligible for some of those funds as well. So I want to recognize our FP2 contributors. You see on the left our corporate sponsors and on the right our sponsoring associations. Without these very generous people, we would not be able to go to the Hill. We would not be able to participate in the research. We just wouldn't be able to do the things that we do. We wouldn't have the Pavement Preservation Journal. So it's very important that you recognize what these people, and I know a lot of these names on this list here, you guys know these guys. So when you see them, thank them for what they do as far as getting the good word out. And in closing comments, we're going to continue to focus on advocating the benefits of pavement preservation. We're going to update our website and generate FP2 benefits literature. We're going to continue our involvement in all pavement preservation research, and ultimately we're going to communicate the unmistakable advantages of pavement preservation. So with that, I appreciate your attention, and we'll answer any questions if you have any.
So, Mr. Tim, how are the local cities going to get part of the infrastructure funding money? Do they need to do it from a grant, or how is that actually put out to them? What's the process?
A lot of that is going to be through grant money, and there may be some more people in here that are a little more familiar with that than I. That's why FP2 is putting together the grant forms with the information on how to fill that stuff out.
What specifically are the issues with the Buy America program? What materials are being challenged by that?
Well, you have aggregates that come in from both Mexico, Canada. You have additives that come in from Europe. Could be polymers, it could be emulsifiers used in the asphalt emulsions. A host of different things that are used in these treatments. And we want to make sure that they're excluded or get the waiver on that Buy American provision. And I don't really think it's the intent, but we want to cover all of our bases on that.
And not really a question, again, but could you put the slide up that had the contact information for the grants on it, please?
And like I said, everybody should get a copy of this in about a week to 2 weeks. All right, thank you again for your attention.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.